Very good. Okay.
Then he made the same mistake, huh?
No, he didn't make the same mistake. He made a mistake. He made a mistake, yeah. Okay. The beginning of the daf, we'll just review very briefly what yesterday, the end of yesterday's Gemara. Who wants to explain yesterday, the end of the Gemara, the different sheet of 70? Anyone else want to explain it? Should I review?
Just understand that they all made a mistake on one account. And they're all motivated their own agendas.
Yeah, MS. Yeah. Okay. Yesterday's Gemara like this. So we'll go through very briefly because the top of the Gemara today is going to just sort of a continuation. I stopped yesterday literally at the bottom of the Gemara. So just quick review. So we said in the Gemara yesterday at the end, really the whole daf yesterday, the whole second half of the daf yesterday, that there was a nevuah from Yirmiyahu Hanavi. The nevuah from Yirmiyahu Hanavi said the following: that Baruch Hu said to Yirmiyahu, "Ki lefi meloyos lebavel shivim shana efkoid eschem." When there is an establishment or a fulfillment of Bavel of 70 years, I will be mafkid you, meaning I'll bring the Geula, meaning we'll have the second Beis HaMikdash. That was the nevuah of Yirmiyahu many years earlier. Separately, there's a pasuk in Daniel where Daniel is talking, and he says, I'm Daniel, binoisi besfarim, I calculated in the books, meaning he sat and tried to go back and forth, calculating exactly the kiyum of the nevuah, mispar hashanim, the number of years, these 70 years that were mentioned by Yirmiyahu, asher hayadvar Hashem el Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Now, the way he refers to Yirmiyahu Hanavi's nevuah is limalois or limloyos lecharvus Yerushalayim. So he adds in the words lecharvus Yerushalayim shivim shana.
Were you reading?
I'm reading. I just wrote down the pasuk in Daniel. Okay. Now, it's important to see the distinction that Yirmiyahu Hanavi's nevuah itself says meloyos lebavel, and Daniel adds in limloyos lecharvus Yerushalayim. So he adds in the churban. Now, the question is the number 70, no one argues with. That's clearly in the Nevuah. So the only question is what's the start date? What's the start date for the 70? Depending upon the start date, you have, good? Yeah. Depending on the start date, it will tell us exactly when the 70 years are up. So the question is how many different options were there? So I'm just going to go through the options for the start date. There's 4 options for the start date. Again, to be Mekayim Divrei Yirmiyahu Hanavi in the Nevuah, it says that at the fulfillment or the completion of Bavel, 70 years, the completion of 70 years from Bavel. So what does from Bavel really mean? It could be from the time Nebuchadnezzar came to power. That was the mistake that Belshazzar made. And so therefore, according to that cheshbon, it worked out to be that it was after the second year in Belshazzar's reign. You have the 45 years, then the 25 years, that was 68. Plus the 2 years of Belshazzar gets to 70. He thought, no Mashiach, no Binyan Bayesheni, must be the Jews have been abandoned. That was Belshazzar's mistake. Then Achashverosh said, Belshazzar made that mistake, but let me explain to you my cheshbon. He says there is 3 other possible times. The very next year after Nebuchadnezzar became Melech Bavel, he invaded Yerushalayim and conquered. The king at that time was Yehoiakim. Yehoiakim was followed by Yechoniah or Yehoiachim. So Yehoiachin was sent into a gullus also. That happened 7 years after Nebuchadnezzar conquered Yerushalayim. So that means 8 years after he started his Malchus. Yeah, that was the time that Achashverosh assumed was the beginning of Bavel, meaning the start of the gullus of Bavel. So 70 years from there means you need to now add on another 8 years. So you have to add the last year of Belshazzar and another 7 years, which are through the 5 years of Daryavish the first and Koresh Aleph, who is the Cyrus the Great, and then you still need the first 2 years of Achashverosh. Once the second year of Achashverosh finished and the Beis HaMikdash had not been rebuilt, Achashverosh incorrectly concluded the 70 years were up, and therefore it must be the Binyan Beis HaMikdash is not coming, the Jews have been abandoned. He was also wrong. Then the Gemara explained that really we should be going based off of the final Galus Bavel, meaning which happened in the next king, Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, which was even 11 years later than that, which means you now need to push the time for the ultimate the building of the second Beis HaMikdash 11 years after that. We know that Achashverosh had a 14-year reign, and if his conclusion was at the beginning of the 3rd year, 11 years later would be at the beginning of the 14th year, which was the beginning of his last year in reign. The Gemara asked the question, well, That's true. If that's the cheshbon, then how come the Beis Hamikdash wasn't built during the times of Achashverosh in the beginning of his 14th year? It was only built 2 years later, in the beginning of the second year of his son with Esther Amalka Daryavish II, right? Darius, right? So his beginning of his second year was when the actual Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So then how does that work? Rava answered, because really we made an additional mistake. The additional mistake that everyone made in this entire calculation was assuming that when we went from Nebuchadnezzar to his son Evil Merodech, and we counted the 45 years of Nebuchadnezzar and the 23 years of the next king, and you add that up to get 68, we double counted the year that power transferred. So in that year that the power transferred, we counted the year for the first one and that same year for the second one, which means you need to take off a year, and that happened twice as well. When the first Daryavesh went into the Cyrus the Great, that wasn't really 5 years, that was really 4 years. That means that all of the calculations of the Achashverosh and Belshazzar were all for two reasons. One, they started from the wrong time, and even had they started from the right time, they were missing a year or two depending upon when they went. So even when the Gemara said its calculation that it should have been in the beginning of Achashverosh's time, that was predicated on a mistake in assuming that there was the additional year between Nebuchadnezzar and Evil Merodech, and an additional year between Daryavesh and Koresh. So therefore, once you add those 2 years in, it goes. Hey, Colin, what's going on? It goes into. I'm sorry. No, there you go. It's so funny. You should know it, Colin. You just know this is going to be recorded. So if your video is on, people are going to see you in your bed. I don't mind.
All right, I'll stop.
No, you look wonderful. You look fantastic.
I can watch myself on the TV.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what you should be doing. Say hello.
Oh man,
I love it. Feel better.
That's gonna go viral.
Oh, viral for sure. Okay. Yeah. This is going on the daf on the chat. Yeah. Okay. So Lemaisa, there was two mistakes. Mistake number one is when to start. Mistake number two is the fact that they did not count the double years. We double counted, which means really it should have been the beginning of the second year of Daryavesh, which is exactly what happened. Now, that was Rava's answer, that there were Shanim Mikutos. Our Gemara now continues to bring a brisa to support that idea, and it's referring to the year of the first Daryavesh, which was after Belshazzar, right? So remember, there was 45 years of Nebuchadnezzar, and then 23 years of Evil Merodech, which should be 68. And then the 3 years of Belshazzar makes it 71 from the beginning of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, but 70 from the beginning of the conquering of Yerushalayim. And so the Gemara now says, Tanya Nami Hachi, the very first line of the Gemara, Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Okay, Tanya Nami Hachi, meaning this brisa is going to be supporting the idea that there must have been a double counting in the years of Nebuchadnezzar's reign into Evil Merodech's reign. The Bach changes the gears here a little bit. He says, V'od Shana Achas, one more year, yesh lebabel, and here babel means lebelshazzar, meaning the additional year of Belshazzar's reign needs to be included. Why? But since Belshazzar only had 3 years, you need an additional year to get to the 70 from the times of Yehoiakim, meaning because if you count from Yehoiakim when he starts, meaning from the time of the conquering of Yerushalayim, 70 years, it'll actually be the first year of Daryavesh. So this brisa is telling us that in order to truly get to 70, had they been correct, it wouldn't have been at the beginning of Belshazzar's third year, it would have been at the beginning of Daryavesh's year. But you see clearly from the brisa that they even already understood that there was a double counting that we needed to adjust for, so therefore that's going to be a raya to Rava's answer. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rava, not only did Koresh make a mistake, and not only did Achashverosh make a mistake, but Daniel also made a mistake. Now there's a separate puzzle. All right, so now that part he was correct about. The part that he was incorrect about, or the part that he made a mistake about, was, or where do we see that he was back and forth, was from the lashon of the pasuk. Amar Rava, af Daniel ta'a b'hai chushbana, dichsiv, like it says in the pasuk I quoted before, and I'm just going to quote it in a little bit bigger, is Ani Daniel binosi b'svarim. Binosi literally means I made cheshbonos. I thought about it. Bina. I went back and forth to try to figure it out. Bina is always a person who understands davar mitoch davar. He has to sort of figure it out from clues, right? So he says binosi. He was going back and forth b'svarim. Midika'amar binosi michlal deta. It sounds like he really wasn't 100% sure, and maybe he made a mistake when he said what he said, right? So the Gemara says, now, it's important just to understand what was Daniel's mistake. So Daniel's mistake was, I said there's potentially 4 times to start, right? Daniel wouldn't have made a mistake about the double counting. The question is what year to start. So we said we could have started from Nebuchadnezzar. That was Belshazzar's mistake. We could have started from Galus Yechanya. That was Achashverosh's mistake, and that was 8 years after. However, there was a point in time that would have made sense. and it would have been made Yirmiyahu Hanavi's words fit, which would have been the beginning of Bavel, meaning the beginning of, from the Jewish perspective, when did the problem with Bavel start? When Yehoiak, right in the beginning of the invasion of Yerushalayim, right? Meaning the process of Galus, Bavel, took 18 years. From the time of the conquering of Yerushalayim to the time when they started burning the Beis HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av, that took 18 years. So that 18-year process means that Daniel thought Mashiach, the second Beis HaMikdash, should have come 18 years before it really should have. Because he understood it to mean from the beginning of the conquering of Yerushalayim by Bavel, but really it was from the end of the conquering of. So that's a third possibility of a start date. And if you go with that start date, then it comes out that if you're going to add 70 years, so when should that have fallen? So you count the 45 years of Nebuchadnezzar and the 23 years of Evel Merodech, minus 1 for the double counting, and minus 1 for it's not starting with Nebuchadnezzar's reign, but starting with Yehoiakim's reign, which means you have 66. Plus the 3 years of Belshazzar gets you to 69. Plus 1 year into Daryavish's reign, starting with the second year of Daryavish the first, according to Daniel's Cheshbon, is when the binyan bias should have been, which, by the way, would have also been exactly the same of what it actually ended up being. Daryavish Aleph, his second year, could have been the Zman of the binyan bias Sheni, according to Daniel, and it turned out to be in the beginning of Daryavish Bez's second year. So it really was exactly the same when Daniel thought it would be versus when it actually ended up being. It ended up being in the second year of Daryavish. The question is, which Daryavish? Daryavish the Rishon or Daryavish the Sheni? Was it the son of Esther and Achashverosh, or was it the original Darius? Right? That was the mistake that Daniel made. And now the Gemara is explaining that Daniel's mistake was not based on just a miscalculation. It was based on Psukim. He darshan Psukim, and the Gemara is bothered. Who says he made a mistake? Meaning the Gemara just said it as a davar pasha. We count with the last part of the destruction from the end of the 18 years. But why was Daniel wrong? Maybe Daniel was right and the Gemara was wrong. So the Gemara says, "Mikol makom kosher kroya dadi." You have 2 psukim. You have the pasuk siv melos lebavel, which is the actual words of the nevuah of Yirmiyahu, uksiv lecharvos Yerushalayim, which are the words of Daniel. Now, it's not here in the Gemara, but it happens to be what happened was Daniel, when the time came, he was living during that time when he thought the second Beis HaMikdash should have been built, and it wasn't being built. Just imagine being the Gadol Hadar. You're like set. You know exactly when it's going to be, right? The Gemara said earlier he wasn't a Navi, but he was Beruach HaKodesh. He knew that the binyan Beis HaMikdash was supposed to be 70 years, and his calculation had it coming in the beginning of the second year of the first reign of Darius. So that means it wasn't built. And he's staring up at Shemayim, and he's like, God, what's going on? Where's the Beis HaMikdash? Starts davening, starts fasting, trying to figure it out. And it says that a Malach Gavriel came and told him he made a mistake, and told him the correct cheshbon. Lucky guy. He had Gavriel come to him and tell him that really you made a mistake. You don't go with the beginning of the Churban, you go with the end of the Churban, when we actually had the Sreifas Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, it's going to be 18 years from now, which turns out to then be in the second year of Daryavish the second, right? Meaning 2 years after the last year of Achashverosh's reign. So Amarava, so that means that there was something truthful about that time that Daniel thought it should have come. This is the idea, I think, behind the Gemara talks about Be'itoi u'Ba'achishana. It's famous, stira. When is it? Is Mashiach coming Be'itoi in the right time, or Achishana, is he going to come early? Which one is it? So this is where everyone's famous thing. I don't know what's more famous: keep on Shabbos and Mashiach comes, or if we deserve it, Mashiach comes early, or if we don't deserve it, it'll be after 6,000 years, whatever it is. But Be'ito B'Chishena means that there are specific times throughout history where there was like a specifically mesugal time for Mashiach and for the binyan Beis HaMikdash to come. So therefore, this Daniel's nevuah was one of those potential times. So how do you explain it? Zakrava Marava Lepkida Ba'alma, that first Geula was a little bit of a memory. What was that time? That was the beginning of the reign of Koresh. V'hainu dichsiv kol amar Koresh melech paras. This is the following is what Koresh said. Kol mamlechos haaretz nosan li Hashem elokei hashemayim. All of the lands Hashem has given me. This is Koresh Hagoy. Koresh, Cyrus the Great, saying about Hashem that Hashem gave me all of these lands. V'hu pokad alai livnois lebayis b'Yerushalayim. This was the idea that Koresh gave permission to the Jews to build the second bias. This was like a little bit like an echo of a Geula, meaning really the ultimate Geula for Bayis Sheni was happening 70 years after the destruction of Bayis Rishon, but this was already 70 years after the beginning of the conquering. So you see already living inside the Galus Bavel, during those 70 years, 18 years before Binyan Bayesheni, we already had the beginning of that, and that was as a kiyum of the nevuah of Yirmiyahu according to Daniel's interpretation, right? And based off of that, the Gemara now brings a drasha related to the same idea that we're just saying that Koresh was the first.
His mistake was that he counted that mamish.
His mistake was where to start counting from.
Right, but they had some value. The first passage.
What's that?
But you're saying that they've had some.
Yes, meaning it was a mistake in the sense that the ultimate Geul didn't come then, but it was a Pekida Ba'alma, meaning it wasn't like a nothing. There was something happening then. There was like a little bit. What's that? So I'll tell you in a moment.
There's 50,000 steps before that too.
So the Rajba here. Let's read the next line, and I'll tell you what the Rajba says, and whatever your question is, I think will become even maybe not stronger, but a little bit more powerful. Darush Rav Nachman Bar of Chizda Ma'idechsiv. What does it mean when the pasuk says? Now this is also referring to Kairish, different pasuk. Koyamar Hashem lemishichai. Hashem said to his Mashiach. Koresh, Koresh a guy, Cyrus the Great, he's referring to him as Mashiach, he's referring to him as the Messiah. Yeah? Asher hichzakti biyamino, then, and the pasuk goes on to continue that Hashem said to Koresh, his Mashiach, about he gave him this power to go ahead and build the Bayesheni. Ask the Gemara, V'chi Koresh Mashiach was Koresh the Messiah? Not possible. Ela Amar Leah Kodesh Baruch Hu Mashiach. So rather they make a drush on the pasuk. Hashem said to the true Mashiach, whoever he ultimately will be, Kubel or Kobel ani lecha al Koresh. I am complaining to you about Koresh, meaning Hashem is complaining to the ultimate Mashiach that I'm complaining about you. Hard to understand what that means. I'm complaining to you, or in reference to you, about what Koresh did. What did Koresh do?
This means Mashiach, the ultimate Mashiach.
Yeah, so that's
the figure that is alive before he's born.
So 1 second. Yeah, so we'll get to that in a second. V'ani amarti hu yivne beisi v'yakabetz gal yusi. I told him that I wanted him to be involved, build it. I wanted him to bring all of the Jews together to be able to build the second bias. The Hu Amar, rather, what he did is mi bachem mikol amma b'yal. He just gave them permission to do it, meaning he sort of stepped away. This almost sounds a little bit like what Mordechai said to Esther. Who says that it's not going to come through someone else? This is your opportunity. You need to jump in here and get things done. Hashem said to Koresh, a guy, I want you to be the one who builds Bayesheni, and if you don't build Bayesheni, it's going to be a problem. Koresh said, okay, no problem. What did he do? He mailed it in. Meaning, yeah, he gave them permission, and of course he's known as a good to the Jews because of that, but this was a lost opportunity for Koresh, and ultimately a lost opportunity for us. The Rajba says on this Gemara that had Koresh done what Hashem asked, that would have been it. Not that the Beis Hamikdash would have come early at that time. That would have been the end. That would have been the kiyum of Chaggai's prophecy of the Beis Hamikdash Achron, and that would have been it, because this would have come al yidei nevuah from Hashem. What's that?
Lots of those. If this would have happened, this would have been it. That would have happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. All right. So, but not too many of them are coming from the Rajba. Yeah. Not you and I could say a lot of that. Rishonim say stuff like that. So Lamaisa, what comes out from the Gemara is we have 4 potential calculations. 2 of them made by Goyim that had 2 mistakes. Mistake number 1 is the starting time was wrong, and mistake number 2 is they double counted years. And then the mistake by Daniel was not really a mistake. He didn't make a mistake about the double counting the years, and even the counting from the beginning of the Golus of Bavel was not entirely incorrect because it was reflecting a specific Zman where it would have been Mesugel to have the ultimate Geula, at least according to the Rashba, or certainly the Geula from Golus Bavel. But since Koresh didn't actually do what was being asked of him, it ultimately didn't pan out.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
How long did it take to actually destroy the Beis Hamikdash?
18 years from the time that Bavel conquered and entered in Yerushalayim to the point where they burnt down the Binyan Bayis Rishon, the first Beis Hamikdash.
So before that was a timeline.
Yeah, 18 years. 18 years. Nebuchadnezzar came to power
For the first one.
for the first one. Yeah, I don't know the second one, but yeah, meaning Nebuchadnezzar came to power. He came to power. He was in power for 1 year, and it was during that year that he effectively fought the war against Assyria, Assyria. Defeated the city of Nineveh, the capital city of Assyria, came to power, and when they asked him, okay, what are you going to do in your first 100 days? They said, oh, I'm going down to Jerusalem, and I'm going to destroy that temple of the Jews. That was literally the first thing he said. He went down to Yerushalayim after his first year in power and said, I got to go destroy that Beis Hamikdash, and it took him 18 years to do it ultimately, but he did, after 18 years. And then after 18 years, when it was burning, that was on the 9th of Av, which we mentioned earlier, Tinus. Okay, So that is really.
That Koresh was what skills did he have that Moshe would come and he built it himself?
I don't know. That's a good question. Meaning, what exactly was his chos? Meaning, I'm not 100% sure what it was that he did to deserve it, and what it was about his malchus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu felt.
If only he would have been more involved.
The only thing I could imagine is you see the pasuk says that Koresh himself said, "Hashem gave me this malchus." Right? He's saying like there was an acknowledgement by this non-Jew that everything that he has comes from Hashem. How many goyim do you know who truly think that and are referring to what we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Right? Meaning, I think, and this may be a little bit of what the Rashba is touching on. I know the Ben Yoyada fleshes this out a little bit, but I think what the Rashba is saying a little bit is the ultimate geula, not just the geula of Bayesheni, which was a very Jewish geula, but the ultimate geula, when all of the evil of the world will become, that can only happen when there's a recognition, not just by us, but even by the goyim, of the emes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if there's a goyish king who's coming to the realization that the Hashem runs the world, and Hashem said, "Oh, you know that," it's almost as if to say that Hashem through Koresh was trying to affect the ultimate geula, because you see it was even happening amongst the non-Jews. But again, you have to sort of probably work that out a little more complex. But either way, okay. So let's take a moment here and just figure out what are we about to do here. From here to the end of the daf today, it's all a gadata. And it's not just a gadata, it's actually probably better to say not a gadata. It's
What's the definition of a gadata?
stories, yeah. But it's not always stories. It could just be sometimes it's explaining psukim in Tanakh in terms of like how to understand it, which is actually what today is. The story is actually in Megillah Esther. The story, we all know the story, and we'll review it in a moment. But the Gemara is now going to be doing like a Talmudic version of learning up Rashi, learning up Mefarshim on the story, what actually was going on in Megillah Esther. So I printed for myself out just because the psukim in my Gemara are so small for me to read. Okay, so let's start. So we already started yesterday touching on V'yihi b'yimei Achashverosh, the first pasuk. I have you come sit next to me, Paul. No, I like you. Okay. No, it's my Gemara is very small, so I wanted to print it out. Yeah. So V'yihi b'yimei Achashverosh we already talked about, and we explained what Achashverosh's name is, who Achashverosh, that he was a rush from beginning to end. We talked about Hodu Kush, where his kingdom lasted to, and how many Medinas he was in control of, and we discussed that when was this whole Gemara we just came off of was coming off of the Gemara. What do you mean by Yomi Mahim Keshevas HaMelech? It was from the beginning of his reign, and then it says later that the party started happening in his third reign, and we said it's because he made this party as a celebration over the fact that the Beis HaMikdash wasn't rebuilt. So you see, it was such a Russia. The Psukim continue telling us about the rest of the story. So the Gemara picks up from the two dots. Here we are. What does the pasuk say? Chel paros umadei apartimim. So there was first a 180-day long party that was for the entire empire. And then after that, he had a 7-day party, and that 7-day party goes like this. It says, after those days were finished of the big party, the king made for the nation living in Shushan Abira. I'm reading from the Psukim. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to give context to the story over here. I know we all pay attention to the Megillah when we're reading it, but we're all excited about, eating and drinking and whatever. I just want to make sure we're all good on the story. So after the first party that Achashverosh made for everyone in his empire, he made another party for 7 days. Lemi gadol ve'ad katan. That was for literally everyone. Small people, big people, chasha people, not chasha people. It was just a big party for the people of Shushan. Mishteh Shivas Yamim. It was a 7-day long party. B'chatzar ginas beis hamelech. It was in the courtyard of the palace. Now, what did they have in this party? So the pasuk says, it was made. Sorry, before we get there, it says the party was made for chel paras umadei hapartimim b'sari hamedinos. Yeah. So who are these people? Chel paras umadei hapartimim sounds like you have the Persians and the Medes, right? So here it's referring to the umadei hapartimim. Hapartimim means like an officer or a nobleman or something. So it seems here the Medes are referred to as the officers. Uksiv, and the other pasuk says lemalche madai uparas, whereas over there it's referring to the Medes as having kings. So which is it? Is it referring to are the Medes the kings, or are the Medes just the noblemen? It seems like it's a stira in psukim. Amarava isnuye isnu bahadadi. You need to understand that paras umada, even though if you ask a historian, they'll say the Medes almost never existed. They were really sort of like a subject of the ultimate Persian Empire. But at least from our perspective at this time, we had two separate groups. the Medes and the Persians, they came together to fight Ashur, Assyria, a very big world power at the time, and therefore they made a pact, sort of a compromise between each one's malchus in order to defeat Assyria. What was that pact? The pact was they made a tonight between each other. Imi non malchi, if we are going to have the king, minaychu ifrache, you will have the nobleman, meaning basically like we'll have the executive branch, then you can have the legislative branch. However, v'imi minaychu malchi, but if you have the executive branch, then minon ifrache will have the legislative branch. I mean, the idea basically was some sort of a balance of power. This was just a practical manner. So when it says in the Megillah that the malachim came from Madai, that was when Madai had the king, and the noblemen were coming from Paras. And when it says that the Paras was the king, that's when it says that the Madai had the noblemen. That's how you explain the psukim. And just so you know, Achashverosh at this time was the king, right? Because Achashverosh was the Melech Paras, and that's the explanation of why at his party it was Chel Paras Umadai Hapartamim, because the Medes at that point were just officers, not kings. Okay, the pasuk continues. It says Behar Oisai es Oisher Kivoid Malchusai. The pasuk. I'm reading in the Gemara the continuation of the story in the Megillah. So the next part of the Megillah talks about that the party, this 180-day party, was there to show off all of his wealth. Amar Reb Yosi Bar Chanina Melamed Shalovash Big Day Kahuna. From here we learn that he wore the vestments of the Kohen Gadol, the 8 begadim of the Kohen Gadol, which remember when Nebuchadnezzar came in to the Bayis Rishon, he took basically all of this stuff for his museum. Yeah, and one of the things they took was the begadim, the clothes of the Kohen Gadol.
We saw yesterday, the other guys got killed.
Oh, exactly. Ksiv hacha yikar tiferes gedulasai. It says over here that it was yikar tiferes gedulasai ksiv hasam lechavod lesefares. So you see that the big day kahuna are referred to as kavod and sefares, and it says over here in the pasuk that he took yikar tiferes gedulasai, where sort of makish tiferes letiferes, that it must be what he took when he took tiferes was the big day kahuna. In fact, what John mentioned is actually going to come up in a little bit. After 180 days, right? So this was after the end of the first party, and now the beginning of the second party. He made a second party, and that second party was for 7 days, and it happened that it was in the Chatzar Ginas Bisan HaMelech. So what does it say over here? This story of having the first 180 days for the entire empire and the 7-day party for just the people in Shushan, Rav and Shmuel had an argument over whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. Meaning, was it an intelligent thing that he did or not? One opinion holds that Achashverosh was a pikeach. He was a very smart, shrewd king, and this was a very smart thing that he did by having the first party for the entire empire and then following it up with a party for the city of Shushan. Whereas one holds that it was the opposite. How does it explain? Why was it so smart to do the empire first and then only Shushan after? He brought those that are away from him in first. Because he could always have his own people in his area come, but he wanted to bring them all together at this moment of celebration when there was no Beis Hamikdash. This was an opportune time to do that. Therefore, it was very smart the way he did it. Whereas the other opinion holds he says the opposite. He should have treated the people locally a little bit better. Why? Because they're always around. Why? Because they'll be loyal to him. The imerdu be hanach, and if these ones who are far away were to go ahead against him, hanach have he'd have people to protect them. But if he doesn't show them respect, maybe they won't come to his defense when the people rebel against him. Okay, so that a machlekes about whether Achashverosh was a tipish or if he was a chacham. So it says over here, Shalu es talmida bes Rishim Bar Yochai. The Rishim Bar Yochai is talmida. He asked him a question. Right, whenever it says Sayyid Shal Yisrael, it's the Gemara's way of referring to actually Klal Yisrael. So what was it that Klal Yisrael did to deserve destruction? I mean, there was a decree. There was a decree by Haman, right? The whole thing. Hashem Hipil Pur. It was in the mazel that Klal Yisrael should have been destroyed. What did they do to deserve this destruction? We saw in all the psukim yesterday, in all of the psachim, that at least a third of those psukim were reflecting the idea that there were mitzvahs that they weren't keeping on some level, or averos that they were doing, they weren't keeping the Torah. And so what?
They benefited from the.
So you're already jumping ahead because you're a Talmud Chacham, but the rest of us have to read the Gemara. Amar lahem, he said back to them, Umruatem. You tell me. Meaning, you're asking me a question. What do you think it was? Meaning he was using it as an opportunity, I guess, to be mechanach them. The words of that they were nene from the Suda aren't in the actual Megillah. That comes from the Medrash, or actually comes from our Gemara. Here, let's read it inside. You tell me. You're asking me why did they deserve to die? You tell me. What do you think? Amrullah, they said to him, Russia, because they were nana, they benefited from Achashverosh Suda. Different Mefarshim explain what.
That before, that means, inviting them there was already like a decree almost. It looked like he had a plan.
Achashverosh had a decree. So I think the plan here.
The plan is already in effect before they even did the Yismach.
Right. So Achashverosh's plan, and ultimately Hashem's also because he was being Masav of it. But the Gemara is really trying to figure out why was Hashem going to allow this to happen. It seemed like he was going to allow this to happen.
They didn't do it yet.
He didn't do it. They didn't do it yet.
They
Yeah.
started the plan without the Jews even doing anything yet. If it's because they ate, that only happened after the start. The big meal.
So you're asking on the Talmudim, that can't possibly be the reason because there must have been something happening before that.
Hashem gives us free will.
That's a fair point. It's a good point. But either way, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai responded back, that can't be the reason because that happened only what Imkain, Shibashushan, Yahargu. The Nana Misudasa Shel Achashverosh happened at the second Suda, not the first Suda. And they bring rayas that they were Nana from the fact that in the second Suda, it says, Ubimloos hayamim ha'ela, and this isn't the Gemara, this is in Rashi. Ubimloos hayamim ha'ela also hamelech lechol ha'am. You only see in the second party, the 7-day party, that it was lechol ha'am that we know for sure the Jews partook. We don't know that they partook in the first Suda.
So they should have been punished. Right?
I mean, us, that's what the Gemara is saying. If that's true, then only those Jews in Shushan, if only the Jews in Shushan should have been punished, because if we're talking about the second Suda, that was only for the Jews in Shushan. So therefore, that's not a good teretz.
God only punishes.
So Kol Yisrael Ravens Elazar said by some Mefarshim that this might have been a good reason, and their argument would have been that if the Jews in one area are doing something bad, that we're all sort of responsible for that. Certainly, there's an idea like that. Gemara says Shebechol Olam Kula Al Yahargu, but his Shimon Bar Yochai's response was, but that really is not fair. That the rest of the world should be held accountable. The rest of the Jews should be held accountable for that. Amrulo, so they said, okay, so you asked us to say our teretz, you didn't like our teretz, so then you tell me, what's your teretz? Amarata, what do you think? Amr Lahem, so he said to them, it's going all the way back to the times of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar came in, broke through the city of Yerushalayim, ultimately he built a statue. So machlekes over here, whether this was a statue of Avodah Zarah, if it was just a statue of Nebuchadnezzar himself, and he would force them to bow down, not so much the Torah Avodah Zarah, but more in terms of just showing fealty to Nebuchadnezzar, and they did. And Hashem was saying, or Shimon Bar Yochai was saying, that Hashem was going to destroy the Jews over the fact that they bowed down to Nebuchadnezzar. Amrullah, they said to him, meaning Nesias Panim, meaning if what happened, what you're describing as Avodah Zarah has no, you don't just, if there's a decree because of Avodah Zarah, then there needs to be a true emes hadin, meaning you're telling me that was why they should have been killed, so then how were they zocha to the nes that allowed them to be saved? Meaning if this is what they did, that they were bowing down to Atzelim, that's, you're basically saying that they were, they deserved it. And so through what did they benefit not being destroyed? Amr Lahem, he said back to them, Haim lo yasa ela lifnim. They only did it quietly, meaning they did it on the outside, but inside their hearts they never felt this way. So to Afakadosh Baruch lo yasa iman ela lifnim. So to Hashem, when he was decreeing their death, the death was really only in order to get them to do tshuva. But really, ultimately, he wanted the tefillah of Esther and Mordechai and all the Yidden and the fasting and the davening to Hashem. So therefore, he made this happen. Now, this is really a very difficult answer. If the Gemara is saying that they really did Avodah Zarah, the kasha is much better than the teretz. The kasha here is that if they really did Avodah Zarah, and collectively as a community they did Avodah Zarah, and this was true for all of Yerushalayim, not just the people in Shushan, then really there should have been a destruction. How do you get out of that? Just by saying, it's a nice vart, Hashem loves us, but in the end of the day, there has to be a real thing called Avodah Zarah, and there has to be a real thing called din, and we don't just get out of that. So the Mefarshim explained that really, like I say before, that Nebuchadnezzar's statue wasn't really an Avodah Zarah, it was just fealty to his malchus. And really, it was a chil Hashem that they shouldn't have done that, right? Because you have to remember, this is mamish in the times that the Beis HaMikdash was built, it was up. They shouldn't have done it. And by the way, this is exactly the same time that who didn't do it? The famous example of the people that didn't was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were the ones who didn't bow down to Nebuchadnezzar, and they were saved when they were thrown into the Kivshan Aish. What it's saying over here is really everyone should have done that, right? Because but really, you have there's a halacha that when a guy puts the option of death to someone, or Chel Hashem, halacha l'maaseh, you're supposed to give up your life. So it's not so pashut that it's completely mutter to do just because you were scared, but it's not the same thing as the Gimel Averis of Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Dam, Megilla Arayis, where the halacha would be that you'd have to be decreed on, right? So what the Gemara is answering is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu never intended to kill them because of this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended to quote unquote scare them, to get them to be motivated, to get inspired to do tshuva, and therefore they were able to be saved.
Between a Vodazara with your heart and a Vodazara just with your foot.
So I mean,
it sounds like the Gemara is saying if you don't really mean it, it's not the same level as if you do.
well, so I think this. I mean, again, I'm not answering your question probably the way you want, but I think that's sort of the understanding of how you had, like in history, like let's say by the Inquisition and the Jews of Spain with the Marranos, and how they, in order to save their lives, they walked around with their yashka punchings around their neck. And what's that?
So much is based on a kavanah anyway.
Yeah, but you do find, let's say,
Even though you're not chayav misa, if someone put a gun to your head and you don't do it, even though you're supposed to die, you're not chayav misa. You're considered an onus, even if you did it.
that's true.
So the question,
No, I understand your question. It's is there a distinction really?
It sounds from the Gemara
That there is a difference. Yeah. I don't think there is. Yeah. But I that's why I think the Mefarshim run to explain how this isn't a Avodah Zarah. What we're really discussing here is Chilul Hashem, which is also terrible, but that already is something. Because again, if all we're talking about is Chilul Hashem, then that already falls into the category of something that Kiviyachal Hashem can say, you know what? I know you really weren't trying to be Mechal on my name, and therefore, okay, continues the Gemara. We got a lot of Gemara to read. So then it says that no, you're good. So the second party of the last 7 days, where did it occur? It occurred b'chatzer ginas bisan hamelech. It occurred in the courtyard of the garden of the palace. So which one was it? Asked the Gemara. Rav Shmuel Chad Amar Haroy lechatzer lechatzer. The people who deserve to go into the courtyard go into the courtyard. Haroy legina, and the even more chashuv people get to go into the garden. Haroy lebisan, and those who get to go into the palace get to go into the palace. You can just imagine, like the nobles got to go into the palace, and the low people were hanging out outside around. That was one opinion. V'chadam, or the other opinion was no. Hashivan b'chatzer. He started everyone off in the chatzer, and that didn't hold everybody. So he opened it up into the garden. Begina v'lo hichzikasan. It didn't hold him there either. Ad sheichnisan lebesan v'hichzikasan. Until now, he had all of the room, and so that means everyone was really able to get inside. This almost seems like I can hear a mashal over here of two different drachim and avodas Hashem. There's the Litvish Mahalach, which was that only the Gedolei Torah were the ones that were able to connect the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and really the Pshutei Am had to come to them for what to do. And then there's the other Mahalach of maybe more of a Hasidic Mahalach, where yes, we go through the Rebbe, but ultimately everyone has the opportunity to connect to Hashem mamish directly. Yeah, that was what it is. Meaning everyone. Did we have statuses where some people were out here and then some people were a little closer and then some people were mamish inside the palace, or did everyone get to go into the palace? But either way, Masnisa Tana, a third option of how they set up the party. Hoshivan b'chatzer, he put everyone in the chatzer, in the courtyard. Upasach lehem shnei psachim, and he made two gates. Echad legina ve'echad lebeis, and almost as if to say you could choose. You want to come into the palace, come into the palace. You want to choose, you want to come into the garden, you can come into the garden. Okay. Chur kapras with chelas. This was all of the stuff that they had in the palace over there. My chur. What is chur? Chur, Ravam or chari. It's a certain type of like a wool tapestries that had slits in them. Ushmol Amar Melas Levana Hitzialahem, some sort of a white wool or white linen. Karpas, what's that? Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Kardim Shel Pasim. It's like cushions and pillows of pasim. Pasim is also a type of wool. Al Glile Kesef Amudei Sheish Mitoy Zav Kesef, that they had these silver poles and marble columns and beds made of gold and silver. Ask the Gemara, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Haroy lekesef lekesef. He who was chashav enough got silver, and the ones who were really chashav, Haroy lezav, got golden couches. Meaning everyone really went all out with this party. Reb Nechemia said to him, Im kain atamatul kina besuda. That doesn't make sense. That he's handing out. Some people got gold and some people got silver. You're going to create problems. People are going to be like, "What do you imagine? Someone goes to the house for Shabbos. You're like, all right, I'm going to give you flesh. I'm only going to give you chicken, and you're going to have to sit in the back and have farfel with vegetables. That doesn't work. Yeah, people are going to be insulted. Ella, right? Elohim.
You were going to say cheese. You love there.
Yeah, I do love there. Elohim shall kasef. Rather, what it was the type of couch was that the couch was made of kesef, but it was standing on golden legs. There's a remuzim through this Gemara. There's tremendous remuzim in all the Gedolim Mefarshim over here. No, yeah, the Metzias.
So if they wouldn't know.
What do you mean they wouldn't know?
I mean, obviously, he's saying
no. I mean, the Gemara didn't know. The Tanaim are arguing back and forth.
The people wouldn't know they're sitting on silver or gold.
No, they would know. They would see it was silver on the top and gold on the bottom.
So same kasha.
No, but everyone has the same thing. Meaning the whole point was that when it says, trying to answer the question, were the mitos made of gold or were they made of silver? So the first answer is some had gold, some had silver. The second answer, they all had the same thing, and it was just that the mita itself is made up of gold and silver. The pasuk continues, Bahat Vashesh, which is like, Vashesh, I think, is like a type of marble, or Bahat, one of them is marble, one of them is, it's referring to the floor. They redid the floors. They brought in like some Italian marble, something or other. What does it say there? Birch, yeah, okay. Number Abasi Avonim Shemischotetos al Baalein. It's explaining the lashon of Bahat. Shemischotetos al Baalein. It's very difficult to mine this stone. The quarries are very hard to find, or they're very difficult to get the rock out of, and therefore they're very expensive. V'chein hu omer. That's like the says in the pasuk. Avnei Nezer, these very expensive and valuable stones and jewels. Misnosesos al admaso. They move, they travel. Meaning the idea is you have to go very far to find them. The point is it's not easy to get to them. Therefore, they're very valuable. Then it says Vidar v'sechares. What is Vidar v'sechares referring to? This is amazing. All one pasuk. It's just explaining, just trying to describe the grandeur of this party. That it was marble and it was wool and all of these things. Vidar v'sechares. What does it mean? Vidar v'sechares. Rav Amar. What does dar mean? It means dare dari. There were rows and rows of these sort of beautiful types of stone. Shmuel Amar Evan Toiva Yesh Bekrachei Ayam V'Dara Shma. No. There was a very big stone, a beautiful stone that was referred to as Dara. That's what it was called. V'Hushiva Be'emtza Suda. They put it in the middle of the Suda. Umi'ira Lahem Ketzarayim, and it would light up the room somehow with like as if it was the middle of the day. Deberi Bishmal Tana, a different shot as to what Dar V'Sechares means. What's Dar? Shekara Deror L'Chol Bali Schayra Achashverosh became a libertarian for the day and got rid of all taxes in order to make it easier for businesses, and he did this as a way of getting everyone to love him because he was a big ego, bal ego. Yep. V'hashkois b'kleizav v'kelim v'kelim shoynim, and it says over here that the next pasuk it says that everyone who was drinking out of golden goblets, the kelim v'kelim shoynim, and they all had different types of vessels that they use. And then it says v'yein malchus kit rav. There was a lot of wine, kiyad hamelech, that the king wanted. Right. So what does it mean here? Kalim shonim. Kalim shonim implies that it's kalim mi kalim shonim. It should have said mishunim mi bayale. The proper diktuk would have been that they were different. Rather, it says shonim, which sounds like there was repetitive kalim, meaning it seems like there was a repeat. What does it mean? Amar Rava yotza baskol v'amar lehem. A baskol went out and said to them, I'm assuming to the people who were partaking in the Suda, or maybe to Achashverosh himself, maybe. Yeah. Rishonim kalu mipnei kalim, and this is what you were referring to. Balshetzar, the one who initially thought that the Beis Hamikdash should have been built after his second year, celebrated by bringing out all of the kalim. So he made a mistake, and what happened to him? And he died. V'atem shonim b'hem, and you're taking them and using them again in this Suda? How stupid do you have to be? Maybe the first mistake, what happened to him, maybe it'll happen to you. Now, it didn't happen to them. But it did a little bit. Vashti died, right? But that's what it says in the Gemara earlier. The Gemara yesterday said that when they used the kalim in the Beis Hamikdash again, this time around, Achashverosh didn't die, but Vashti did, right? Because the Sultan came and was meraket and danced with them. But the point is that this is what it's saying over here, that a Baskol came out and said that don't these kalim, right? When we lane this kalim shonim, what do? We lane it with the nigun avecha, because it's referring to the using of these kalim in the Beis Hamikdash. Gemara says Shasiya Kedas Ein Ones, that there was so much drinking that the Shasiya was Kedas, like according to the law. Ein Ones. I did. Oh, sorry. V'yein Malchus Rav. Thank you. There was a lot of wine. Rav is a funny lashon. It should have said V'yein Malchus Harbe. It should have said something along those lines. Amar Rav Melamed Shechol Echad Ve'echad Hishkeu Yayin Shegodol Eimona B'Shanim. Everyone was treated with wine that was older than them.
You would have a young wine, don't worry.
Yeah. It's like, imagine coming over and saying, what type of scotch do you want? Yeah, and they say, how old are you? Well, I'm 40. So, okay, I have a 50-year-old scotch. Only stuff that's older than you.
It's like a kid every day.
Right, no joke, yeah? But hashasiya kedas eino nes, it means eino nes, that, the simple read it means is everyone was drinking, no one was forced. Eino nes. My kedas, what does it mean that it was kedas? Reb Chanan mishum Reb Meir, kedas shel Torah. It was they did it like the way the Torah is done. Ma das shel Torah achila meruba mishtia, that you eat much more than you drink. Af sudase shel oisei rasha achila meruba mishtia. Don't ask me what that means. I don't exactly understand the connection between the way the suda was done.
The Torah's version of eating.
Yeah, what's it? Does that mean halacha versus agadat. I don't know what that means. I don't know what limit
Mom
Torah.
says you're supposed to drink more than you eat.
There you go. Right.
Oh, so it's based on the karbanos. You give 3.
Oh, versus
versus
nisach. Right.
him for wine.
Okay.
Flour for wine.
There we go.
So that means that Achashverosh is holding in the karbanos.
Well, he was holding in Yirmiyahu and Navi's nevuah. I mean, yeah. I mean,
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Unless it's just
no. It's yeah.
Could be that it's a godly. I don't know. It's a shot that there's the kavana. Everything he did was the kavana, or just there's the way life is that everything has meaning.
Unless it means the Jews who were there, even though they shouldn't have been there and they shouldn't have been partaking, maybe they were the ones who were doing it. I don't know.
God was talking to them through the party. They should have paid attention.
Yesh la'ayin. It's one of the downsides of the daf is you come across Gemaras where you want to try to really spend time to go into each one of these things. You can spend a week just organizing the din. Okay, let's continue a little bit. Okay. Let's skip the line. It says Eino Nes. It means that Rebbe Lazar says not only did not only was the wine very good, but it was unique. He had enough different types of wine that he was able to give people from their own city and their own area wine from their area, so that they didn't have to try something new. Because we know how anyone who has kids knows how difficult it is to get them to eat something that they've never tasted before. I don't want to drink a wine. I go to Chosen. I want my meal, and I want it exactly how I always order it. I'm not trying anything new. Same thing over here. Last size was a good analogy, right? Last size, it wasn't the other night. Delish. Last size, yeah.
After that meal, son of me and Akiva came to Woodmere and Rose Shiur.
Yeah.
We were both like going into a coma. The food and the sugar and the car. We were like,
last says kirtzon ish ve'ish. So what does it say over there? It says that they drank a lot. Kikein yisad melech al kol rav beis. So last says kirtzon ish ve'ish. He tried to do like according to everyone's desires. Amar Rava last says kirtzon Mordechai v'Haman. Achashverosh tried to do like Mordechai and like Haman. What does it mean? Mordechai dechsiv ish Yehudi. You see, he was referred to as ish. Haman, because it says ish tsar ve'oyev. So you see that they're both referred to as ish, and it says here kirtzayin ish ve'ish. So the Meforshim explain, I think, that Mordechai was trying his best at the Suda, and you see that's the responsibility of a Gadol Hadar, that if he sees his people are doing terrible things, he doesn't just give up on them. Even at the Suda, he was there trying to make sure. He didn't go to celebrate. He went to make sure that there was a good hashgacha, to make sure that as much as possible that they weren't eating treif, trying not to give them yayin nesach. But he wasn't. Mordechai did, and Haman went to try to make sure that everyone was doing the opposite.
He went into the party.
It's mashma from the Gemara that way.
Clothing with the women, right?
Or at least that before the party. It seems like Achashverosh consulted with the Gadol Hadar and said, "Listen, I want the Jews to come. What hashgacha do I have to tell them, say that the food is under in order to get them to show up?"
And what about Haman? What did he do?
Haman wanted them. I'm assuming get them to be nena from the Suda. Meaning the whole point was to try.
Mordechai did according to each one.
Achashverosh did according to each one. Yeah, he tried to do like Mordechai, meaning by making it possible for the Jews to come. Let's say by having kosher food or whatever. And he tried to do like Haman, meaning to get them to be nana from the Suda, to try to get them to celebrate. You have to remember, what was the purpose of this Suda? This Suda was a celebratory Suda over the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was not coming. That's when you really try to wrap your head around what the Jews were really doing here by being at this party. It's one thing to not show up to shul for minyan. It's another thing entirely to sit and say, "Oh, that's a waste of time." Not only that, I'm so happy. I have simcha when you do terrible things. That's all. Celebrating the Beis Hamikdash not coming. That's already.
Mordechai went pretending to enjoy himself.
No.
Even though
He probably wants to tell you guys, this is crazy.
He might have stood at the door and said, "Guys, don't go in." But if you go in, just know the food's kosher. I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't know.
As opposed to what we say here, don't go to the restaurant if it's not kosher.
Right.
This is different respect.
Yeah. Okay, continues the Gemara. What does it say? The next thing in the pasuk says, "Gam Vashti Amalka also mishtei nashim beis Hamalchus." Vashti Amalka also made a suda, and it was set in the also mishtei nashim. It was a women's suda, beis Hamalchus, but it seems like it was in the king's in the palace, his house. Beis Hanashim Mibayale. If she made a separate suda for the women, it should have been in her section, right? Why did it say beis Hamalchus? Amarava must be that really she wants to be close to the men. Shneihen ledvaraveir nischavnu. Really, this whole entire thing, this whole party was filled with znus and filled with pritzos, immorality, and she was just as much of a prutza, if not a bigger prutza than he was, and therefore she really wanted to set her party right there, so that not only that the men could look at them, but they could look at, they can be looked at by the men. And it's pashut to me that it does not mean that they had two separate sudas, where in one suda there was only men, and in one suda there was only women. I have a very hard time believing that in Achashverosh's suda it was just a bunch of men. My understanding of it is that he said to his wife, listen, this is a party. I don't want you here. I want you to go hang out over there, go hang out with your friends, and we're going to invite other women to be at this party. And that really, and we'll see in a moment what that exactly was, because we'll see what he did to Vashti, which again, a lot of us know already just from growing up, but Shnehem Ledvar Aver Nischavnu, their intent from this whole entire beginning of this was that it should be a display of immorality. Hainu the Amri Inchi, like people say, Ihu Bikari, that when they refer to the man, they say he likes large gourds, large pumpkins. V'itze and his wife, Bibutzini, with small gourds, but the same thing. I mean, they like she's smaller, he's bigger, but the point is that they're all in the same, they have the same intent. Either way.
And the pumpkins is referring to anything specific?
No, it's referring to just eating and just, we have things recorded. So.
Like Yismach.
Yeah.
One big party.
Yeah, that's what it is. But the party over here is an immoral party.
Kevin, go back to sleep, Colin.
No, Colin's there. He's doing great.
Weiter.
Kevin, is there any diak here, or is it just random? Is it
Random.
It doesn't mean anything.
No, I don't think it does.
Okay, it's
What do you mean? What
Nothing. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I can't hear. What's going on?
I accidentally muted it. I'm sorry.
All right.
Sorry. No. You didn't miss anything. I'm back to the same line.
All right.
B'yom hashvi'i. Next pasuk says, "B'yom hashvi'i." On the seventh day, Ketov Lev HaMelech b'Yayin, when the king's heart was filled with yayin. Now, why does it say B'yom hashvi'i? Otu ad hashta lo tov liba b'chamre. Until this point in time, his heart was not filled with wine. He was drinking the whole time. Only on the seventh day did he have enough wine. Now, what happened, by the way, on the seventh day? V'yihi b'yom hashvi'i. I'll read it inside because it's very interesting. She made her own party. B'yom hashvi'i, on the seventh day, Ketov Lev HaMelech b'Yayin, and he was fully good and geshikerd. Amr leMehuman, he said to Mehuman, Bizisa, Chavoina, Biksa, Avaksa, Zesa, V'charkas. He said to these 7 Sarisim, all of these people who served him, Lahavi is Vashti Amalka, bring me Vashti, bring me my wife Vashti, the queen, Lifnei HaMelech, in front of the king, Bekeser Malchus, wearing the, what do you call it? The crown. The crown of the queen's crown. Laharos Amim, to show to the nations Vahasarim es Yafya, her beauty. Kitovas Marahi, she's really good to look at. This is what the king wanted. He wanted to tell his wife, come in, go bring my wife here. He didn't even ask her to come. He said he sent his servants to go drag her from her party where she's getting all her covet, bring her over here. So why does it say B'yom Hashvi that he did this? Amarava Yom Hashvi is Shabbos Haya. That was Yom Hashvi is referencing Shabbos, meaning the day was Shabbos. It was the 7th day of the Suda. That means the Suda started on a Sunday, maybe, and it ended on a Shabbos. She Yisrael Ochlin V'Shosin, Jews of the time were eating and drinking their Suda. Maschilin b'divrei Torah u'b'divrei tishbachos. They would start with divrei Torah. That's how their conversation started. When they sit and drink, ein maschilin ela b'divrei tiflos. When they sit and drink, all they do is they talk about narishkeit. You had the same thing over there. All of these people got together, these Avdi Kachavim. The people from Madai said the women of Madai are the most beautiful. And the Parsoios would say that no, the Parsoios knows the Persian women are the prettiest. Achashverosh said, no, let me explain. Kli, the Lashon here is unbelievable. Kli shani mishtamish bay. The Kli, the vessel that I use, referencing his wife, Kli shani mishtamish bay, the Kli that I use, Einoi loy madya veloy parse, is not Medi and not Persian, not from either one of theirs. Rather, Ella Kazdii, I found some exotic Kazdian woman. Ritzonchem lerosa, do you want to see how beautiful she is? Do you want to see what I get? Unbelievable, just to.
He had to have been wasted at this point.
Oh my gosh, 7th day filled with wine.
This is the queen.
He's talking about, yeah. Amru lo, they said to him, and they had to be pretty schnickety drunk for their response. They said to him, "In, yes, we want to see her, but only only if she's naked. If she's not naked, we have zero interest." Unbelievable. The king says, "Do you want to see my wife?" They say yes.
It was an orgy.
Yeah, it was some sort of a really.
It sounds like
Tr-
you didn't have a friend.
Think about all of the thought around what exactly was so bad about the Jews going to the Suda. Now all of a sudden you're starting to wrap your head around. They went to the Suda. They were nenami Sudasa Shaloisei Russia. This is what they were partaking in. They
You
were.
see how it says this is not how Jews talk.
This,
you know,
but
this is not going to talk.
but we were there. It seems.
Shaitas.
Shchaitas. Now the Gemara says, "Shebemida she'adam moeded ba." The way you treat people, moeded in loy, Hashem's bezdin will treat you. Meaning, this was what happened to Vashti. We assume that must be Vashti did something like this to other people. Gemara says, "Melamed shahaysa Vashti harsha mevia benos Yisrael." Vashti, the queen, would take the Jewish women, umafshita narumos, and would take them out naked. The osa behen malacha b'Shabbos, and force them to do malacha on Shabbos. Hainu dichsev, like it says in the pasuk, achar hadvarim ha'ela. After these things, this is the next couple of psukim. After he sobers up. Achar hadvarim ha'ela k'shochei mas hamelech Achashverosh. When the drunkenness went away, when he sobered up, Zachar es Vashti, he remembered his wife Vashti, the es asher asasa, and that she did, the es asher nigzar aleha, and that was decreed upon her. And they explain over here, the es asher asasa here is a little extra. You don't really need to say that she did. You could just say he remembered his wife, and that he decreed upon her death, because right, that was Haman's suggestion was to kill Vashti, right? He remembered what she did, and that's a slight remez. What did she do? Kishem she'asasa. Whatever it was that she did was what was done to her.
The Pasuk says she refused to come.
Yes. Pasha, she refused to come, but it's here. It says that they asked. He said, "Now it's the Pasha says she didn't come, but that was what they were suggesting should happen, right? It's not mashma that the king did it. It's just mashma that now." And they medayik over here that when the pasuk says, and you were about to say this, I think, when I was reading the pasuk, is if you look at the pasuk when he says to his, Shiva Sarisim, what did he say? Lahavi is Vashti Amalka. Go bring me Vashti Amalka, Lifnei HaMelech, in front of the king. Bekeser Malchus, bring her with the crown. The Mashmo says is that the only thing he asked her to bring was the crown. Meaning, when you bring her, make sure you bring her not dressed.
Just wearing the crown.
Just wearing the crown. Okay.
Kevin, when we say this is what he was thinking, after these things, the king was remembering Vashti. Now, the pasuk is saying what he was remembering. So it says he was remembering Asher Asa.
Asher Asa is up.
When we're being the daik in that, we're making a drasha. What does that mean? We're going into his thought.
Well, we're going into the Megilla writing down Baruch HaKodesh, which is interesting.
We didn't bring that as a right.
Right, yeah. I was just going to say, it's interesting if that's the shot. But yeah, if this is all in his head, then it could have been a riot from earlier. But also, yeah, this is the Megillah bringing Baruch HaKodesh.
So how are we being the daik in his thought? If that's what he thought, we're bringing Zer Asa is going on
because
she did that.
It's the diak is more in not what he was thinking. The diak is the fact that the Megillah is putting it down that it's referencing his thinking about what she did. What do you mean what she did? He's really focusing more on the Gzeira. The fact that the Megillah puts that in, there's a little diak there that it must be that what she did, meaning what she got, was exactly what she gave it. No, you gotta do what you gotta do. Don't worry about it. Yeah, no, I'm gonna read ahead, even if because I got comment on the Zoom, so we're gonna read ahead, and plus John's here, yeah. So we're gonna get down to the bottom of it here.
One by one.
Yeah, no, I go down with the ship, man. I go down with the ship.
Let me ask you, so Shabbos morning
Regular time, baby.
8:30.
8:30. Let's do it. Yeah. Pasuk continues. It says Vatimoyen Hamalka Vashti. It says that Vashti said she doesn't want to come. Vatimoyen Hamalka Vashti. Michti, I don't understand. Why did she come? Pritza Sahavi. She was a prutza. Why shouldn't she come? Didn't we just say 2 seconds ago that she and her husband were, struck from the same cloth? She should have wanted to come. Yeah. We said, like we said earlier, that both of them, how you do it? Both of them had intent on doing Aveira together. My time alayasi. So why didn't she come? I'm Rabbi Yosi Berchanina. Milamed sheparcha batzaras. Must be this is where we, the famous medrash that she had leprosy. B'masnisatana, a different shot that uba Gavriel v'asal zanav, that Gavriel gave her a zanav, a tail, and that's why she didn't come. And again, the point over here is that she was so. It's a
It must be the reason she didn't come.
It's because she had a son of, yeah. That's what Torah Shabbat Pep. Now it says over there, Vayiktzaf HaMelech Ma'od, that Achashverosh became very angry over the fact that she did not come. Right? What does the pasuk say? Vatimoyin HaMalka Vashti Lovei B'dvar HaMelech Asher B'yad HaSarisim Vayiktzaf HaMelech Ma'od V'chamosa Ba'ora Boi. He got very angry. Amai Dolkabe Kulihai. Why was he so angry? Amar Rava Sholchale, because he sent to her the following. Sholchale, she sent back to him in response to his request. Bar Ahur Yore the Abba, the horse keeper of my father. Now again, it doesn't I don't think mean her father. Her father would have been that would have been Koresh the Great. So it's not so clear. I think who her father was. I think her father probably would have been Evel Merodech or Balshetzar, maybe. I'm not sure who her father was, but whatever. The horse keeper of my father, I think Balshetzar was her father. Abba Lakabal Alpha Chamre Shasi would drink 1,000 cups of wine or barrels of wine, and basically V'lei Rave, and he was fine. He could really hold his liquor. However, Vahu Gavra, meaning referring to her husband Achashverosh, Ishtati B'chamre, he would get drunk right away from his wine, and basically she was calling him out on being weak, on being a beta male. She was saying, "You are no king. You are no king. You're pathetic. I'm not coming, to your Suda to show it to you." Therefore, Miyad, he immediately, the Chamasa Ba'arabai, got angry over this and said that, all right, let's kill this woman. Yeah, okay. Pasuk continues, Vayamar HaMelech LeChachamim. So the king said to the Chachamim, what does it mean?
We still call holding your liquor.
Yeah. Vayamar HaMelech LeChachamim. So the pasuk continues, and the next pasuk, right after he was very angry, it says that the king said to his wise people, Yodei Ha'itim, the ones who know the times. Gemara says, Man Chachamim. Who are the Chachamim that he was referring to here? Rabbanon. It's referring to the rabbis. Yodei Ha'itim. Why are they referred to as the ones who know the times? Sheyodan la'aber shanim u'likvoa chadashim, because they know how to make uber years and to add in the mole and the chasar in the months. That's why they're referred to as Yodei Ha'itim. But he was really looking to speak to the rabbis. What was he looking for? Amr lahu dainu ali. Help me figure out what to do to her. Meaning they wanted to know our ideas, the Torah-dik ideas of Amru. They said, "Hey Chinav." They said to themselves, "What are we supposed to do over here? Name a lekatla. If we tell her to kill her, tell him to kill her, what's going to happen? Lamachar sikle chamra. When he gets sobered up, will boil him on. He's going to say, "What did you make me do? And you made me kill my wife. And what's he going to do? He's going to kill us." Name a shavka. Leave him alone. Tell her to say, tell him to say that. What do you want? What do you, wives? It is what it is. He might conclude that we're not taking his malchus seriously enough. So they said, Amrulai, smart Jews came up with a pshara that really, they said something without saying something. Amrulai, miyayim shechar of Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Galino me'artzenu, and we were kicked out of our land, nitla eitzamimena. We don't know what we're talking about anymore. You can't ask us. We no longer even don up our own nefashas, right? Because we don't have Sanhedrin anymore. So Zil Lagabe, he changes the gears here. Zil Lagabe Moav. Go to Moav. Why? What's Moav known for? The Yasir B'duchtayu. They haven't changed. They're the same as they were always. Kechamra di Yosef al Durdaya, like wine that sits on the dregs, which is, I guess, when you're smashing the grapes and you make the wine, it just sits there. They haven't moved. The Taima Amrilei, and this was a good thing that they said. The Jews said to Achashverosh, the pasuk says, Sha'anan Moav binu Rav, that Moav is secure from the times of his youth. V'shokate hu el Shamrav, that he's also showcased. What's that? Yeah. Basically, the point is that Moav never changes. It doesn't go from one vessel to another. It never had a galus. Therefore, it never lost its flavor, and it never lost its fragrance. It's just referencing the idea that Moav never changed. Therefore, you know what? You want to know who to go to? Maybe go to them. They still have whatever power they once had. They may be able to give you an eitzah. Therefore, Miyad, he said, okay, fine, I'm not going to ask the Jews. The Jews don't know what they're talking about. I'll go ask the Moab. And therefore the pasuk continues and says, the Hakarov Elav, the ones who were close to him. Who is that? Karshana Shesar Admasa Sarshish Meres Marsana Memuchan. Those are the 7 Sore Parasumadai. He asked them, Roya Pnei Amelech Hayosh Mishana B'Malchus. He asked them, Kidas Malas B'Malka Vashti. What should I do with Vashti? On this, that she didn't listen to me asking her to come biyad hasarisim. What should I do? So Amr Levi, kol pasuk zeh al shum korbanos ne'amar. Each one of these psukim was a little bit of a reference to the idea of korbanos, meaning each one of these people's names was a little bit of a taina of the malachim to Hashem that Klal Yisrael deserved to be saved. Why? Karshana Amru Malachi Hasharas Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ribono Shel Olam Klum Ikrivu Lefanecha Karim B'nei Shana. Did these goyim ever bring
Karshana is someone's name?
Karim is a sheep?
No, never Karshana.
Karshna, yeah, there are 7 names here. There's Karshna, Shesar, Admosa, Sarshish, Meres, Marsana, Memuchan. So those are 7 names. Each one of those
They're
names.
Not all Moabi. They're not all.
No, not all Moabi. No, but 1 or 2 of them were, and so he went to ask them. But once we're bringing their names, we're darshaning their names that they're mentioned over here. So what was Karshna? Kar sounds like a car. Karim is the sheep. So the Malachi Hasharis was saying to Hashem, did the goyim who are you're siding with here almost as this decree against the Jews, did they ever bring sheep as a carbon? Karim b'nei shana, young sheep as a carbon? Kederach shekriva Yisrael lefanecha. Did they ever do that? Of course they didn't. The next second name was Shesar. Shesar is from the lashon of shtei, 2. Shesar klum ikrivu lefanecha shtei tyrant. Did they ever bring in front of you the 2 turtle doves or the 2, is that the tyrant, 2 turtle doves, whatever? Did they ever bring such a carbon? Of course not. Admasa, which has the word Adama, Klum Bol Fanecha Mizbeach Adama. Did they ever make an altar? No, they didn't. Tarshish, Klum Shimshu Lefanecha B'Bigdei Kahuna. Did they ever use the Bigdei Kahuna, meaning as an Avodah? Of course not. Dichsib B'Hu Sarshish, like it says, Sarshish V'Shoam V'Yashpe, which is referring to the actual Choshen, a Choshen that the Kohen HaGadol wore. One of the stones in it was the Tarshish. So you see the Tarshish there, and this guy Tarshish, the name, must be, and I think they understand it, by the way, the reason why there's a drush in all of these is this wasn't their actual names, even by Memuchan. These are their Megilla names, and so that's why we're dashing it. The next one was Meres, Klum Mirsu B'Dam Lefanech. They mix up the blood of the Karbonis, the way we've done it. Marsana, Klum Mirsu B'Mnochos Lefanech. Did they mix up the meal offering of the oil with the flour? Memucha and Klum Hechinu Shulchan Lefanecha. Did they prepare the lechem hapanim on the shulchan? Okay, Vayomer Memucha. The next thing it says is after he asked all 7 of them, so he listed them off. Karshana Sheser Admosa Sarshish Meres Marsana Memuchan. So the last one is Memuchan, and the assumption is that it listed the first one because he was the most chashiv, and listed the last one because he was the least chashiv. So, but then it says that what happened. Yeah, well, so that's already, you start to see that Nahapoichel already living inside the evil of that time was already the beginning of the Yeshua, which is a theme in general throughout all of Megillah Esther. But you're right, it is very interesting. So what does it say? Vayomer Memuchan. So who was the one of the 7 who opened up his mouth, who made the suggestion of what to do with Vashti? But was Vayomer Memuchan who? It was Memuchan. What did he say? Tana. Memuchan ze Haman. V'lama nikra shmei Memuchan. Why was he called Memuchan even though it was Haman? Shemuchan leparanos. Different pshatim. Memuchan leparanos means he already had a decree on him that he was eventually going to have a downfall, like would eventually happen. Then others say that Shemuchan leparanos means that he was born to wreak havoc. But the problem is that's why one way or the other, Memuchan was Haman. Amar of Kahana Mikansha Hedyat Kaifetz Barot. You see that the Hedyat jumps, the idiot jumps to the front. That's typically what happens because he was the lowest of the 7, yet he was the one who responded. The pasuk continues. What was his suggestion? His suggestion was that not only did Vashti insult you by not coming, by her, he did the opposite of what we do with our kids. When our kid makes a mistake, we try to make the mistake smaller. We try to make the mistake not a reflection of who they are as a person. We try to say, listen, you're a good kid. You did something bad. This doesn't mean you're bad. What did Haman do? Haman went the other way around. Vashti did something bad. She disrespected the king, but he blew it out of proportion and turned it into what she did. It's going to create a national problem. Everyone's going to do what she did, and it's going to create. And therefore, we need to create laws and rules that are going to reinstitute the gevura that the men need to have in their community. Lihiyos kol ish sora bebesa, which really, if you think about it, is a stupid law. You cannot legislate a wife to respect her husband. It either happens because you deserve it, or it doesn't happen because you don't deserve it. Legislating it,
all women will die if they don't.
Right? It's like legislating. You must say "I love you" to your husband. You must bring his slippers to him. The whole concept is stupid. In fact, Amarava ilmale igreis harishonos. If not for these first letters that Haman suggested sending out, which was Achashverosh sending out the rule of Lihiyos called Ish Sarir Bebeso, had people not received that letter and seen how much of an idiot Achashverosh was in putting out legislation like this, we would have been destroyed right away with the second letters, meaning the second letters are the first letters later that were sent many years later. People knew Achashverosh was an idiot. How did they know? Because this is his legislation. He makes laws like this that have no effect, that show how stupid he was. Amri, they will say, "My hide the shadir lon lihiyas kol ish sarir bebeisai." He needs to send out a letter making legislation saying that man can be a leader in his home. Pshita, it's pashat. Afilu karcha, even a low status sewer, a person who's a weaver. Bebeisai pardash kal lehave will be a boss in his house. Everyone knows that the men are running the home in that time. So obviously, maybe not nowadays, but certainly in that time, that was a davar pashat. The idea that he would send that legislation just showed how much of a fool, just show how much of a fool he was. Therefore, thank God that happened. It laid the groundwork for them to sort of ignore the second one. Had they not ignored it, they would have killed us right away as soon as that first letter. But since there was a delay, it gave enough time for the entire Nes of Purim. So here you see the same idea you were mentioning earlier, which is that already at this point, before there was even a decree on the Jews, we were already preparing planting the seeds for the ultimate geula. V'yafkid hamelech bekidim. So what did it say then? So now Vashti's dead, and this is the beginning of the second parak. So after he got rid of Vashti, and he realized what he did, and he said to his Na'arei Melech Mesharzav, he said, "Go find me another wife. Go find me more basulos." Right. So it says over here, what did he do? He set up basically a team of people to go through his entire empire and go rally in all of the basulos. I want to be able to partake from all of them. Yeah, exactly. Amar Rav says, "My dichsiv." What does it mean when it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, "Kol arom ye'aseh b'das"? An arom is a clever person. He does things with intelligence. Uchsil, and a fool, yifros ivelas. He exposes himself as a fool, with his stupidity. What does it mean? Kol arom ye'aseh b'das, and a clever person acts with intelligence. Said David, dichsiv, in his old age, it said, "Vayomru lo avadav." His servant said to him, "Yivakshu la'adoni hamelech na'ara besula." We'll get you a helper, a woman, a besula to help, a young girl, young maiden to help you in your older years. So what did they ask for? They asked for one besula. We'll go find one besula. Kol man dahavele barta. Anyone who had a daughter who fit that category, Aisin Neholi would bring the daughter to him in order to be able to serve David HaMelech in serving as bringing him his water and cooking for his food. Keep your head out of the gutter. Yeah. Uchsil yifreis hiveles, whereas the fool exposes his stupidity. Why? Because he said, he promulgated a rule that said, if you have a daughter who's a besula, I want her to come to the king's palace. I need to taste all of the different tastes to see which one I want to keep. Therefore, everyone who had a daughter, would hide his daughter, and therefore that was a fool. So you see, that's the fool. We'll hold over here. The next line in the Gemara of Ish Yehudi really sort of goes halfway down to the next Gemara. But Kalman, I don't know if you're still there. Are you still there? I don't know. Kalman's gone. Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah. Thank God. Can I know?
I was showing this pasuk to my wife.
Oh, wow. Your wife's I can't see your wife.
I'm not. Don't worry, I'm not.
Okay. Tell her I say hi.
Yeah.
All right. Mitzvah Hashem, when I get a chance, I'll upload this YouTube video to the YouTube channel. Please, everyone, share, like, and subscribe. Gosh. I think I saw that we had 2 subscribers. I'm pretty sure you're one of them, and the other one is my wife.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, gosh. Listen, man, we're creating really important content over here, changing the world, 1 subscriber at a time.
Beautiful, absolutely.
All right, Refuah Shalema, feel better, and
you.
hopefully I'll see you later tonight or tomorrow, and we'll tear into the next stuff.
Thank you. Who else is there today? I didn't see.
No, John, the Rabbi, Gene, and Dan. But slowly but surely, we sort of lost them as we were moving across the dock because they had to head out to work.
Got it.
But,
Who's there now? Just us?
John and me and you.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, can I know? Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow we'll pick up from Ish Yehudi. We'll talk about Mordechai a little bit, continue through the story of the Megillah.
Beautiful.
Have a great day, Colin. Feel better.
You too. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.